Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Claude Sharadi, and welcome to this edition of African Knowledge. It's a Friday, and on Friday, if you've been watching, we have our ongoing discussion on African mindset. So I've got with me five people who are going to be talking to me about this topic, and more of that straight after this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will be discussing the African mindset. Sort of, we're looking at factors that may have influenced or continue to influence the African mindset. As we always say in this discussion, there's not really a thing called African mindset because Africa is a continent with 54 countries, if I'm not mistaken. So even in one single country, the mindset of the people can be quite varied. So when we say African mindset, we refer to simply a generalization of the way people think in Africa, and there's a lot of generalization that goes into that. But that's for the purpose of us analyzing few things that we think may enlighten all of us in a way that we'll may be able to have a better understanding of what is influencing the thinking process of the African population. So tonight I have with me six gentlemen, or five gentlemen rather, and I'm the sixth. And I've got Bertrand Abiakare, and who is president of the Burundian community. I'll introduce them myself rather than asking them to introduce themselves. And he's been with us at the beginning of this series, and he was unavailable for a couple of weeks. Now he's back. We have James Lojogo, who is a gentleman from South Sudanese community. He's been in Melbourne for quite a while. He works for government, I would say, but he's very involved in community related matters, and is always advocating for African communities. We have Dr. Matthew Mabefan, who is an anthropologist and lecturer at Melbourne University. He's been with us a number of times on this series. We've got Dr. William Abur, who is a lecturer as well and a social worker. He has written a book on the settlement experiences of the South African, sorry, not South African, South Sudanese rather, in Melbourne. And we have Eugene Allman, who is a filmmaker, a documentary, and who has worked extensively in Africa and continues to work in Africa, even though right now he's a little bit, stranded in Sydney because of the COVID. All right, so that's the whole crew for now. And tonight we're talking about how globalization, modernity, and media may have affected the mindset in Africa. So let's start with modernity, so to speak. And I suppose this term is also a bit controversial. What it means, modernity. There's a lot of things that can go into it, but we know that all societies do progress, and the whole world has been developing towards what we now call modernity with technologies. We've developed countries with a lot of things that are happening. How has modernity and globalization affected the African mindset? I just dropped that question, and then anyone who's ready can take the floor.
Can
If
I?
you don't, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. That's that. I just wanted to make a quick point, and I think it is going to be more elaborated more by my colleagues.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, in terms of modernizations and globalizations, so Africans seem to be a bit backward if you look at it, but also it seems that Africans is also progressing in terms of, if you look at the young people in the cities in current situation in most of the African cities, you could see that there is a lot of passions and dreams in terms of modernizing, the way that people live, whether they, bringing the new culture, bringing in the new ideas. These are the young generation that are passionate about. But I think the bigger problem is based is still in terms of the government thinking and the politicians. The politicians need to be able to embrace this idea of modernizations and to be able to champion and resource the young people who are passionate about this, and that need to be put in area of education as well, because if you see in the cities, for example, you would find most of the young people are educated, or they are yearning for educations, and at the end of the day there is no creativity in terms of thinking and modernizing and creating opportunities, creating the job for those young people who are either finish their degrees or finish their diplomas or whatever skill that they have acquired. So there is still backward thinking in terms of politician, and if we were to share the ideas with the governments, I would say the government really need to fill the gap and to move in quickly.
Okay.
The way that the thing are moving in the in terms of modernization. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Anyone who's ready next can go. Eugene,
I
I see
just think
you raise your hand. Yeah.
I just think that it's important to distinguish between the two things, between globalization and modernization,
Yeah.
because when we talk about globalization, we can't separate it from technology and
Mm-hmm.
access to technology and how that's shaping the new generation of entrepreneurs and artists and scientists and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
With modernization, I think that for a long time there was this idea that was very much promoted in the media, which is part of our subject today as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is modernization equals westernization.
Mm.
And this is something that a lot of people, I think for decades, almost didn't question, that to modernize means to westernize.
Mm.
There was a lot of propaganda since the colonial days that and so today I think people are recognizing that there is an African modernity which is not necessarily Western or westernized.
Mm.
And Africa has something of its own to offer the modern world. And in fact, the world is looking to Africa to appreciate and understand Africa's version of modernity. And the two things, of course, are connected because it's the technology that is allowing these things to be promoted and better known.
Mm.
But I think that Africa is definitely has its own take on modernity, which people are beginning to appreciate, and it's not necessarily westernized. And I think that the technology is now something that can support that. Like when I first started traveling in Africa in the 90s, making an international phone call was a problem. For example, somewhere like Kinshasa
Mm.
or Abidjan, it was a problem to make an international phone call. I had to find one area in town that had a business center and a fancy hotel and pay $12 for a minute to call, internationally and so on.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was running a business. His business was in Guinea, Mali, and Burkina Faso, in 3 countries, but it was easier for him to live in France and to run his business in France rather than live in these cities. Today, that's all gone. Today, this is not a problem at all. The technology is there, the access to the internet, and so on. So now Africa is able to present its own version of modernity, and it has platforms to do it without needing to go to France, without needing to go to anywhere else. And people can actually look to Africa and learn about Africa's take on modernity.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll bring Dr. Mabefam into this by adding one more question as an anthropologist. When we talk about modernization, doesn't that mean we embrace something new and at the same time, we that also means we're walking away from what is there with us that may not serve us anymore, and that may be that we're getting a solution that is automatically also a problem.
Yeah, thank you
What do
very
you
much.
think?
Yes, thanks to my earlier contributors, my earlier colleagues who actually spoke to this issue of modernization. Speaking from an anthropological point of view, I would rather like to complicate the term modernity and what that actually means. And I like to say that when the term modernity is being used, there seems to appear that there's an opposite, which is backwardness, which was where Dr. William actually started from.
Mm,
And it depends on the field that you are and how that is being understood. From a historical point of view, people may have zoned the world into different stages. And from sociological point of view, people might have done the same thing. And if you look at the term modernity, it has a particular fixed period of time, which is actually between the 17th, 18th, and some part of the 19th century. And even as we are speaking now, people are speaking about the postmodern world. Having said this, as an anthropologist and looking at it from that angle, I think that is problematic. Problematic in the sense that we look at the world in the linear sense, that we move from one state to another. But if we look at what actually happens in the world, it's very circular, and we move in circles. For example, there are things in the past that we thought were not great, and we've moved away from them. Today, we are getting to learn to understand that those things are great, and we have gone back to them. If modernity or post-modernity world is into time or series and it's a linear progression, what does that mean when we go back in history to pick some of the things that we had earlier on rejected as part of primitive or backwardness? So the point I'm trying to make is that modernity is kind of problematic, and that kind of linear progression and thinking about things is not actually how the world works. It's actually very secular. For example, we talk about sustainability and living with nature today. There are a whole lot of societies in the past that actually related with nature and seen nature as part of them and do not view nature in a very exploitative sense. It has to be one where they live in tune with nature. At the turn of the modernity, which was the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, which looked at the world from a very extractive sense, where we thought that was problematic. Today, we are talking about climate sustainability and environmental sustainability, and we are going back in history to learn some of those ideas and apply them now. So if the world is linear and we are progressing and moving from different stages, what do we make of that? So, from an anthropological point of view, I think that the whole term modernity is problematic, and I would rather use the term contemporarity, which at any point in time we are in contemporary terms. And I think that it's devoid of judgment, it's devoid of any linearity in terms of thinking, and it's a better choice for me.
good. Thank you very much for that. James, you wanna come in?
Yeah, yeah. I too like Matthew. I have a little bit of issues with the word modernity, and also agreeing with with Eugene in terms of defining modernity and how much Western we are, and in those two lenses, at the moment. Let's say like maybe 10, maybe 20 years ago, when you see a Maasai man with with his calabash and making it mixed with with maybe blood, we would think that was backwards.
Mm,
Or we see a bushman, looking for bush food out in the bushes, or looking for medicine for herbs. We would think that was backwards. Or we would look at a Mundari man who looks after his cattle, smears his hair red. We would think that is also backwards, but it's not. At the moment, when you go to any pharmacy, you'll find a whole section full of herbs. A lot of those herbs have been used for a long time. We have discarded them, and like Matthew said, we brought them back. And for me, I think, yeah, modernity, if we say it's a movement, between uh, what was and towards what's now, Western, then we kind of limiting ourselves in the definition, and makes it really hard to discuss what that actually means for people and communities.
Okay.
Hmm.
Beltran.
Yes, and thank you, Clyde, and everyone else who's contributed to this topic. I don't really have a lot to say, given everybody has given a lot of good ideas there. Um, yeah, for me, there is an issue here. The issue that we have is that the Africans have been made to believe that they are backward. They don't they're not following the pace that everybody else is trying to follow. That they're not fast enough to catch up with where the world or the first world is at the moment. But
Mm.
I'm really convinced that every place on this planet has somehow known the change that has been happening. As my colleagues are saying here, people are no longer going to the traditional healers first before they go to the doctors first. That's a big change. People are eating food that are not really, like not a lot of the food that we're eating is not coming from the field that we, like the land. We getting food from the markets and things. That's not what it used to be in the past. So somehow we need as Africans to learn to have our own kind of modernity that we believe in, because if we keep following, we never get to be modern. Let me give you an example. When the electricity started, we started burning coal. We started doing everything that we could to just produce electricity. Now they are saying, no, that's going to harm the environment. So we need to move away from that to go into a clean energy. Well, if you are an African country that has been struggling to get that, like that energy using the coal, if you're going to follow suit and go, all right, now the coal is not accepted. So I haven't achieved that coal-based electricity first, but now I need to move to a different kind of electricity.
Mm.
That means I will never catch up. I will always be like, oh, they were here, but now they've moved, so I need to follow. When are you gonna be yourselves? So I'm
Mm.
I'm saying no. Looking at the pace that we are at now, check the cars for the car industries. Like they're saying, no, we're going to discard like all these cars that we made that are petrol dependent to produce those that are electric. And guess what? How much expensive are the cars that are electric cars here? So
Mm.
if we define modernity to be like following or doing what everybody else is doing, then we are making ourselves like we're
Doing
giving
a
ourselves
disservice.
I will never be able to really achieve. So for me, Africa has modernized. It has gotten from point A to point B and maybe C. And I think if they continue the way they are, being themselves, doing what they have, plus, remember, we don't have the same climate. Like Africa doesn't have to have all these air cons that we have to have in our houses, all these heaters that are gays or whatever. We don't have to have that. Africa somehow is in that area where everything is somehow in the middle, like it's all like, you know. So we should be like happy with where we are, but of course learn to continue to really grow in a positive. Thank you.
Yeah, but it is the case though that when we talk about modernization, that is ultimately linked to technology. And when you talk about technology, Africa as a whole is still quite behind in terms of technological innovation. Even though we can understand on a philosophical point perspective that we don't necessarily have to westernize ourselves, that's kind of okay. We know we have, for example, Japan, that is a highly technological society, but that is not westernized, at least not in a way that we see what westernization is. But in Africa, we're still struggling to catch up with technological innovation. And that is part of the problem, or I would say is the biggest problem in my view. Do you agree or disagree?
I
Yeah.
it
Go,
linked to
go,
the
go.
point that I was sorry, the point that I was going to make in terms of education. So,
Yeah.
um, in if you look at it, in Australia, just current governments look at the educations. and pull away. They have moved away from the humanities. So looking at the humanities is not the great idea. They are moving to the area that can create, the technology, the innovative areas. These are the areas that the government is now trying to push, the student from the university to take those courses. That is a great challenge. I don't think that African society has moved to that idea. We are still not really moving to that idea in terms of the quick change. However, I like those points that James and Matthew said in terms of looking at modernity being problematic, and for people going back to the old some of the old ideas that were used and they were abandoned, and then we go back again to take them. I think yes, we need to be able to to explore what worked well for the society, and take it. We move with it. What did not work well or what is not needed, we just leave it behind. And I think
Okay.
that is a mindset that we need to be able to take as Africans society, for us to to join the rest of the world.
All right. Matthew, what's your take on that?
Yes, I think my understanding would be it it will be too narrow in my view to limit modernity to just technological advancement. And I'm saying that because even with that technological advancement, it's underpinned by ideas. And those ideas that lead to whatever development we have in any society. If you look at Japan, which is cited as an example, you will realize that Japan's level of whatever it is we have at the moment is actually based on Schumpeter's ideas of what innovation entrepreneurship. And Schumpeter was an economist from Austria. So that kind of development is actually still underpinned by some ideas. And whatever we have in society and whatever structure we have in society, they actually underpinned by certain ideologies. And we cannot run away from that because these things do not run in vacuum. So having said that, I like us to understand modernity with the matching of two things. Like William said, society, especially if you look at Australia, for example, we are trying, or universities are trying through government policies to move away from humanities or social sciences to technologically or STEM-based process. That is good, but that is also problematic because these systems need to work with human beings and human beings need to use them. So if the fundamental of human relations, which is embedded in these social sciences, is broken or done away with, technology alone will not be able to solve that problem that we actually have in society. And we are heading towards what I don't know how the future will look like, but we need to be a little bit careful with just fixated with technology as the solution to all the issues that we have in this world. And I would like to caution maybe in training institutions in Africa and elsewhere that in teaching pedagogy and in shaping young brains that are coming, we need to still point to the utility of human sciences, social sciences in society, and the role they play, and not to neglect them just in the name of technology or focusing on this technological advancement. If we go that way, we are heading towards disaster. We need to be able to maintain the two, and that is a way that I would propose. And these things are all underpinned by ideologies.
Okay. Eugene, you've got a comment on that?
Look, I think what Matthew's saying is spot on, and he's sort of articulated it perfectly. I think to me that modernization and modernity are two. I understand them a bit differently because I think modernization is this almost like judgmental thing, like you have to modernize. There was a time in history where to modernize meant you had to put heavy industry everywhere and so on. And I think this is the cyclical nature Matthew was referring to earlier, that things that were considered very backward 50 years ago are now actually seen as progressive and the right way to move forward. Modernity to me is something a little bit different, and I wouldn't reject the concept entirely, because to me modernity represents more something like a universal relevance, of like we know when we hear an idea or an expression which which we feel is like it nails it. It's like it's talking about something that really captures the essence of the current times, and I think that's what I understand to be modernity. I think with technology, again, like we really have to understand, as Matthew was saying, like on what level we're working with human beings, and the idea that we have to, like in Africa, post-colonial Africa, there was this tendency to develop only the capital city. Like the capital city was the only place where you could find anything, right? In a lot of countries. And if you're not in Kinshasa, if you're not in Abidjan, if you're not in Accra, you go out there and there's nothing, right? So anybody that needs to access any kind of medical technology or communications has to go to the capital city, and that's where it's controlled. And usually it was just in one area, in one kind of neighborhood, right, of the capital city. So now we really have to understand, like, can a person have the same quality of life living outside of a main city? Do you really have to, does everyone have to move to the capital? Is it possible with internet, with transportation, to provide a quality of life for people which allows them to live very well without forcing them to, live this lifestyle, which this American dream, as it were, what do people really need in order to achieve their ambitions and to improve their lives? How much of that stuff is actually necessary? These are the questions that I think we need to ask in terms of, where to take development further.
And that's, for me, that's part of the problem, because if as you said, if you walk out of the capital city, like in the Congo, you walk out of Kinshasa, there's pretty much nothing else.
Yeah.
And that means that as a society, we fail to modernize ourselves, in a sense that as a nation, we should be able at least to have some infrastructure that connects
Of course.
various parts of the countries, so that people are not necessarily forced to come to Kinshasa or to the capital to try to find employment.
Exactly.
And that is a big problem. But I think maybe all of us here, the sense I'm getting is, I'm not sure, maybe I'm misinterpreting, but I think that you seem to be saying, almost all of you, it's not really a problem, because we have sort of, Africa has its own identity, has its own way of doing things. But I'd see a fundamental problem, for example, in terms of food security, which is a big problem, and is going to become even a bigger problem in the future. We have the arable land, but we have not been able to develop technology to be able to grow our own food to feed the population. The majority of African countries are still importing things. I went to Kinshasa, where I come from, back in 2011, and I couldn't even find one single chicken sort of a factory in the whole country. People had to import eggs from Israel or South Africa, and I'm saying this is a big problem. We've got this. It's like the Congo has 80 million hectares of arable land, and nobody is doing anything to develop that. Why can't we, I suppose, educate our young people to be able to develop technologies that help at least to solve the biggest problem of humanity, which is food? And I see that as a big problem. No matter how we can go in philosophizing that, okay, we don't have to be like the West, we don't have to be like this and that, but if we can't solve the smallest problem that we have, we got a problem.
Yeah. And that problem is definitely it's also a mindset problem.
Yeah.
Where at the moment, like we talked about how we look at our own things, our own food. How do we see our own goods that we produce? Are we consuming them? Are we trading within the continent? Because again, there's that mindset of wanting something foreign, something that is different from the usual. And I think that is killing farming on the African continent. And then there is that element of recently in Uganda, for example, they've been trying to introduce mass production of single crop, and that's sugarcane. The idea was we'll produce a lot of sugar, send overseas to process and make ethanol for cleaner fuel for our for cars overseas. But what that does is it requires a lot of land that that people used to farm on their own, used to grow their own food mostly. But what the government is saying is, you let us have this land, give it to an investor, use it to grow sugarcane, and then you will work in the sugarcane plantation. Guess what that does? That's supposed to be modernization of farming, right? But what that has done is that displace people from their land, and then it makes these people become dependent on the wages that are going to be provided by the sugar plantation people. And
Mm.
it's not even enough to, so where you used to grow your own cassava and corn and and nuts and all, and grow a few chickens and goats over here, um, you now have cash at hand, and that means you have to buy everything from somewhere else. You see,
Mm.
and so there is a problem there with the idea of what modernity is. But then there is also the issue of us wanting to see like more at looking at foreign things as being this premium, like
Yeah.
they're better, and that does not encourage local production at all.
And Beltran, I will get you to comment on that, but I'll bring in one element of the media, which is connected to what James has just said. The fact that we are not valuing enough what is ours. I see it partly because we have been consuming so much media from the West, so that we see only what is coming from them as good, and what is ours not necessarily good. So you would have people who would want to eat fries rather than the ugali that that we have, or so there is a problem where the media, the way Africa has been sort of portrayed for centuries, both in the literature as well as in films, or in books, and I mean all that sort of thing. It seems like we have sort of accepted the lie that came from the Western world, and we devalue our own stuff. Bertrand, what that brings to your mind?
Well, it brings a lot of things to my mind. First of all, it makes me agree with what people are saying here, that we're talking about technology, and we're talking about media, and we're talking about modernity or modernization. And when you think about it, it's all about business. When they say Africa is behind, so it doesn't have this, doesn't have that, doesn't have the, it's not able to do this. It means that someone else needs to come in and do that for them. But at what cost? Like what my brother is saying there, that these people are coming here, taking over all the land and making all use of it in the hope that they are helping the country. But in one way, they are disadvantages. They're putting the population at a disadvantage. What is a disadvantage? That people become dependent, and that means they, and we know that this very well. Who can live on a salary that they provide there? It's too small, so the families become dependent on the small money, and they can't do anything. They're helpless. And then we talk about that they have moved away from being reliant on the agriculture. Now they are being paid. Is that modernity? Is that modernization? I don't know what it is. So when I think back to those things, and I know I mentioned the word business here, I think the way that the world operates is that whoever can take advantage of someone else, that's what defines business. If I can, make sure that in the media I make you look like you don't know anything, and you don't have anything, and you rely on me, you depend on me, and then you give me all the licenses and the ways to really take over from you, then I'm happy. I'm making money from you. I don't really care about whatever happens to you or your people, or whatever you talk about the future. I don't really care about it. I'm really making money here. Think about the people that go in Africa to extract the mines. Like the people that go to Congo, Burundi, and other countries, Sudan, South Sudan. How much money do they actually leave for those people that are there? How many infrastructures do they actually build to help the people that are on the that place there to really benefit from whatever is coming from their land? There's nothing
Yeah.
there. And when you
And
look back, you realize that when they say a lot of problems that are happening in Africa in the media, they're not trying to really help those problems, like fix those problems. They're trying to really make the Africans look like they are incapable, and they need to really sit back, and then someone else take over from them, because they can't do anything on by themselves. But then that brings me to two things. One is our education system in Africa doesn't really prepare people to be entrepreneurs, like the people that will really think and plan and do this project, big ones that can really bring jobs and things. When I went to Burundi, my country, I realized that someone will build a double, triple story house just to live in. Two people like living in this double story house, and they are very happy. I'm rich. I've got a Mercedes Benz. I've got this. I've got that. I'm rich. But to me, that's not rich. Rich is how many people are you employing? How many people are you actually paying to do your work, and you are seated here relaxing, getting a report from them that they have produced that and that and that and that. How many people do that? No, we're not really looking at the being modern in the sense that it actually is modern. Because when I think of modern in Australia or somewhere else, if someone tells me I'm rich, then my mind goes, he is employing some people in his farm, for example, in his shop, his whatever. He's paying some people. This person is very important. If he dies, a lot of people here don't have a job anymore. But back home, someone is just rich and goals and things, and like there's nothing else that they need to the people that are living next to them. So that kind of modernization to me is not working in Africa. No, it doesn't. So what I think needs to happen is for the educational system to really be reshaped in a way that prepares children to really be their own employers in the future, to think and use the money that the rich people have to make projects that can benefit the person who is rich and the person who is doing that project at the same time. That is something that I realize that we don't have. We just give people a lot of knowledge. I'm telling you, if someone finishes the university in Africa, they are very, very smart. I'm telling you, they are really smart, because you just don't pass. Like here in Australia, my son can just pass and get into year 12 knowing nothing. In Africa, that's not the case. You have to really, really learn and understand things, but then there's no practice. So there's nothing that tells you that this is going to work this way. This is going to help you to get there. So that's where we're lacking. I think we need to change that. Make sure that the education system supports that creation of jobs and the creation of that modernity that we're talking about.
And all that comes into, I suppose, leadership. And I'll take a point that John Coley is making as he's watching. He says, how come our politicians, who the vast majority of them are highly educated, but they seem to be backward thinking and failing to catch up with the rest of the world? Modernity is linked to advanced technologies and scientific development, yet there has always been a disparity between the northern and the southern hemisphere. Now, we sort of have touched about it, but the part that I want us to comment now is the leadership, because I think that we need there is a need for a paradigm shift, both at the education level, at the political level, and at the social level, where all these social forces, political forces, and everyone else come to say, no, we got to change our way of thinking and look at how we can start developing technologies, developing projects, developing businesses that focus on what we have and how we can add value to what we have, so that we can actually take it and bring it to the international scene. How do we get to that level? And why have we not been doing that sufficiently?
Can I say something on that?
Go ahead.
The first thing that comes to mind is, we've discussed previously in these discussions, we've talked about, the legacy of colonialism.
Yeah.
And I think this is a crucial point here, because we can talk about how capitalism works for different countries, like in Denmark, you can be unemployed and the government pays you enough money that you're not desperate and you can survive.
Mm-hmm.
In Kinshasa, if you're unemployed, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
So this is a colonial legacy that comes from this idea that if you give people social security, they're going to become lazy and they won't work, right? We want to keep people desperate so they work for minimal money. This is a legacy of colonialism and slavery. And this is why the business person in Kinshasa who makes enough money selling Israeli eggs to his customers in Gombe, whatever, in the luxury suburb, is not going to worry about investing in infrastructure and employing local people, because there's enough people that can afford his imported eggs. And so he doesn't care about everybody else, because he's making his decision based on being taught that this is, capitalism. You just have to, it's free for all. There's no, anyone can do whatever they want, and it's fine. There's no control. So you can argue that, like capitalism for Africa is Africans are getting this very, very poor quality version of capitalism that does not allow them to even escape a very basic, desperation. I recently met a businessman in Johannesburg, a Congolese businessman who runs a company that makes fabrics. He's like a Afrocentric fabrics for clothes, from Kinshasa. He outsources to China. He doesn't manufacture anything in Kinshasa. Everything is outsourced and manufactured in China. It's cheaper for him. It's cheaper for him. The cost of labor and transport and everything from China is cheaper for him than to employ people and train people in Kinshasa.
And that is a problem.
Meanwhile, I just want to say that in Zimbabwe, the country that is ridiculed by everybody as having this terrible economy, and the whole media is talking about how terrible Zimbabwe is, I can go to the shops in Zimbabwe and do all my grocery shopping for the week and buy everything that I need, and I don't need to buy one imported thing if I don't want to. I mean, I can buy, if I want, I can buy some special chocolate or something, But in terms of the main things that I need, I can do all my grocery shopping at the supermarket, and everything is made locally, even eggs.
Absolutely.
So,
Matthew, how do we start? Okay, William, you wanna come into that? Let's talk about how we start getting this paradigm shift happening.
I just wanted to bring into the point that yes, I agree with Eugene's that there is really a problem in terms of thinking in capitalism and all that. I think the society, African society, need to move quickly from move away from that concept and embrace the idea that can work for the society or for the people. Now, I wanted to comment in terms of media. Media play a very, very crucial role in the society, and especially in the modern world. So, African media also need to pick up, some of the critical agendas that need to be promoted within the society, so that the young people can also learn quickly and pick them up from the media and be able to do some of those activities. I think that's one thing that the media need to play a role there. Media also need to challenge the politicians. They need to challenge the politician to think differently, and of course to be able to have a creative thinking in terms of resourcing, some of the policies that can help the society. So that's something that I think, leaders need to do. Of course, we all know that in Africa we have land, very fertile land, and it's already been discussed by James and Matthew, and this is something that the Africans should benefit from it. Look at, I give you the example in South Sudan, very fertile land, big land. If you can, if you have a modern
Machinery.
technology, the machinery, you would not, you would be the rich person. But unfortunately, that is not the case, because the country is being occupied by war, tribal conflicts, and people are not thinking in that way. You would find that the cities are full of unemployed youth, and even the university is not training, preparing young people properly, to teach them, to be creative and to be able to assist themselves. That is another problem in terms of education, and I think somebody has mentioned it. I think the education need to do more work around there as well.
Okay.
Thank
Education is to do more work, Matthew, but then education is something that should be pushed by politicians, and then politicians need to have to see pressure from the population. Then the population is hungry. I mean, it's kind of an, you know, it's an you don't know where to start really.
Well, the media, you know, but you were talking earlier about the media, you know, and the
Yeah.
importance of the media and the
Yeah.
importance of you know, basically promoting the idea, you know, using the media to promote a different look at, you know, Africa, you know, and I think that's something that African governments and African state are not doing on that level. They're not producing, they're complaining about misrepresentation in the international media,
Yeah.
but I don't see enough
Of them doing
proactive,
something.
you know, let's create our own narratives, let's
Yeah.
create our own points of view. There's a lot of like, let's prevent, you know, foreign media from coming here, let's create
Yeah.
obstacles, let's
Yeah.
force them, you know, there's a lot of trying to protect ourselves, you know, let's, rather than, you know, let's let them say what they want, you know, we're going to counter with our own story.
That's right. And Matthew, I'll let you speak in a moment, but I just bring in one thing as well. We can see, for example, in terms of technological advancement, I mean, there is a positive story in the media, at least in filming. The Nigerians, for example, have taken, you know, the film technology and have been running with it, producing the films that are Africans, I mean Nigerian, and that speak to the population and doing great. Why can't we replicate that in other settings where, you know, we develop the technology that is already available, but we use it to meet our own specific needs and make sure that we can attend to these issues that our societies are facing. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you. I think on the issue of leadership, yes,
Yeah.
leadership is very important. And when it comes to the conversation that we are having, everything boils down to leadership because they define the macro engagement with the external world.
Mhm.
We've at a point in time that we cannot adapt exclusionist strategy, that is withdrawing from other parts of the world, because we would have to engage in one way or the other, because we may need things from elsewhere and people might also need things from us. It is our leaders who would have to shape that conversation, and the agency of our leaders actually matter here. So for instance, if you are getting on a table with an entrepreneur from another part of the world, the question you need to be asking yourself is, what do I want for my people? Of course, other people know what they want for their people. Do you know what you want for your people? And
Mhm.
how do you convince the other party that you actually know what you want for your people? Look at there are some wonderful lessons that we can learn from China in terms of technology, which actually ensure that Western companies that wanted to manufacture things in China, they needed to transfer the knowledge, they needed to transfer the technology, not just the infrastructure and in that kind of extractive way. In no time, Chinese learn from them and they have the technology, not just the company's infrastructure standing there. I think that's something that the African leaders have to learn, that as we engage with different countries and different entrepreneurs, is it just an extractive form that they take what they want and leave us? Or it's a mutual engagement that we say, this is what I want, this is what I want. Let's debate and let's argue and let's negotiate and see what we all get at the end of the day. Until our leaders have that agency and that ability to be able to engage with other external actors, I think we still have a long way to go. And that also brings us back to, who do we elect? What are the characteristics? Do we elect people based on their ability to perform or based on affinity in terms of ethnicity, religiosity, and other classifications in society? The kind of leaders that we select to represent our countries, they are actually those that we have selected to negotiate on our behalf with other part of the world. And if you don't have what it takes to be able to do that, then you, of course, can be rest assured that your interests will not be met at that level. So that's what I like to say. In terms of the media, and especially the example that you cited from Nigeria, I think that's a wonderful idea. And that is an instance where a country has presented something to the world. And regardless of what it is, the whole world is now consuming Nigerian movies. I think other countries can actually learn from it. And sometimes when I watch Ghanaian movies or Nigerian movies, it becomes very blurred to actually tell the difference because there's a lot of collaborations between Nigeria and Ghana. And you can see different actors in this country actually interacting and acting movies together. The point or the lesson there is that there's nothing wrong to collaborate with other people. Nigeria has the market. It has a large population. So if you are able to collaborate in Nigeria from other parts of the world, you have a larger market to serve. And you make your culture, you make your ideas, you sell yourself to the world as well. Because once you manage as an African country to let your culture penetrate in the Nigerian market, you can be rest assured that it's going places. So I think collaboration is one of the ways that we can actually adapt in terms of media and landscape to also tell the stories that are coming from this. And they can be very positive. There's always a saying that until a lion learns to how to tell a story, the hunter will always be glorified. So if these countries are not telling their story in the media and someone else is telling the story, they are going to tell it from the point of how they understand it and what they stand in by selling those stories. So these countries, in terms of media is a good thing. And at the same time, it also can be used for bad things. So you have to be on the center table. You have to be on a table to also champion your ideas. And I think that in terms of filmmaking, Nigeria has shown us an example, and that's something that we can be proud of, and that's something that we can learn from them.
Absolutely. Before either James or Beltran speaks, I'll just pick on the points that you've made about collaboration. I think that's also another very important aspect of modernity, because in the past, countries used to fight against each other, all the time, but they have now learned to collaborate. The European Union, for example, you had France and Germany that were rivals for a long time, but they've come together to build and sustain the European Union. In Africa, we still, I mean, there is some progress there. The AU is there, but it's still kind of too just people meeting and talking and not really much happening. That collaboration is failing both on individual level, and I see that. And this is not just people. I mean, Africans in Africa, even Africans in Australia, where we are here, we're still struggling a lot to be able to collaborate and partner to do things that together we can do better, as opposed to everyone doing their own individual stuff. How do we get to that mindset of collaboration for mutual benefit, which is essential in my view in advancing our agenda at every level, whether it's technology. If you want to go to the moon, you got to have a good team. The NASA has managed to do that, but it's not just Americans. They had a lot of people from all over the world working for NASA to be able to take men to the moon, and in Africa we're still struggling even to just do things together and make progress in those areas. What do you guys think, James and Beltran?
I'll let Beltran go ahead.
Oh, thank you, thank you, James. I've got some noise in the background. Yeah.
And by the way, Beltran, just before you go ahead, I'll just make a quick comment. John, who is watching and commenting, he said, "You guys are very nice to each other. You need to be opposing each other's view at some point." Don't just agree with whatever has been said. Oppose it as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I want to comment on that, saying that Africans are normally fighting each other every time, so it's good that we can actually agree on some of the stuff. So I'm really happy with this. and and I wanted to just talk about maybe 2 points here. One thing that you're mentioning things about collaboration, and for me, Africa doesn't know itself. Why? Because Africa has like 54 countries. And when you think of those 54 countries and how many people they don't have enough people to even cover India. Like the people of Africa, all of them, on the whole world, they are not more than the Indians in one country. So for me, Africa should see itself as one country. And in saying that, I'm really supporting that idea of collaboration between countries, between regions, seeing the borders as just mere fences that are there that we can just jump over and get somewhere and do some stuff. Look, we have countries like Rwanda, Burundi, and a few other countries that are very overpopulated, and these people, have their energy that they're spending where sitting somewhere. They should be allowed to go somewhere where there's a lot of land, like in Congo, for example. There's Tanzania, in Kenya, they've got too much land that, these people could be, brought together and go and do some work that will produce food, produce a lot of things, and we don't have to really be hungry. And for me, when we talk about, and this is further to this point, that our government are really busy talking about family planning. Oh, have two less kids. No, you don't have to have this many kids. The problem is not about not many kids. The problem is, what system do we have in education that we make our kids to grow with the mindset of finding the best way to live. How much investment do we have in, not in our countries alone, but in other countries that have the space for it. Like if you have agricultural project that you really want to run for, like on a maybe 200 hectares, for example, can you do that in Burundi? No, Burundi doesn't have that much land. But do we have the same land, like a bigger land in Tanzania or Congo or Zambia, other bigger countries? Yes, there is land that is not doing anything. So in fact, we have all the things that we need, but we're not using them efficiently and effectively. We're not really we're not benefiting from the assets that we have as Africans. So I want people to really move away from planning families or restricting births, like number of kids that you can produce. I don't really care, because we will never be able to really make as many kids as the Chinese, for example. we are still this small population, and our land is so much bigger than China, than India, than the US. We were too big. If you put India, China, and US, and maybe another country together, that's what Africa is. And how many billions of people are in those countries that I just mentioned? More than half of the population of the world. Now, go back to Africa. There are just 1.2 billion people. How much land do they have? Massive. What are they doing with that land? Nothing. They're just saying they are hungry. So we need to really move away from that philosophy of, following the Western media that is saying, oh, Africans are overpopulated. Oh, family planning. No, we don't need family planning. We need more kids, more work, more project, and more things. That's it. Thank you.
All right. James, you got something to say? The volume is not coming up.
I think it's mute.
And it doesn't appear to be muted here.
Oh, okay. That's technology problem, James.
That's a technology problem. We need to fix the technology. All right. No, we can't hear you, James. Can you hear us? All right. If you can't hear us, all right, we will go to. I mean, we're sort of approaching the end of the show, but I would like us to sort of look at how we can then use all these things, because technology is both a solution and a problem in itself. Media can be good and bad. It depends how you are using it, and the whole concept of modernity is one that obviously is problematic, because it may be misunderstood in a way that, as it's been said here, it may mean westernization, which to the minds of many people perhaps it still does, but there is a way of achieving modernity without necessarily being westernized, and then we have countries that can sort of demonstrate that, whether it's Japan or South Korea and others. But how do we go about in trying to create a new mindset where people obviously understand the need to move forward and catch up to the international standard, both in terms of scientific development, technological advancement, and other things that are important for our own culture and society? Put all of them together and push ourselves forward, so we don't stay back too much, so that and we don't have to ask for aid, but we can actually trade and be able to bring more things into the international stage.
Can
Yep.
say something on
Go
the
ahead.
previous question before we deal with this
Yep.
question.
Okay.
The question, it was Bertrand who responded, and James could not get opportunity because we could not hear him. I think I'm trying to take the challenge that John actually gave us, and I like to challenge a little bit our thinking about how we perceive Africa. And I'm saying that because if we continue to characterize Africa as this disunited place, it further adds to the image of Africa, which is negative. And we are not doing anything different from what media tells about Africa. I think as Africans who have lived in the continent and come from the continent, we need to acknowledge some of the local efforts that are ongoing in the continent to unite the continent. So, for instance, if we talk about even independence struggle, it was the united efforts of different African countries that actually led these countries to finally decolonize or finally gain their independence. It was not a single effort of one country or one different countries working in isolation that actually led to this independence. It was a concerted effort. And you could see that even places like apartheid in South Africa, the whole of Africa and other places in the world actually acted in solidarity to pull that oppressive system down. So we have to acknowledge that. As we are talking at the moment, the free continental trade zone in Africa is being created. These are efforts that at the local level are actually in a uniting form, which creates the biggest trade zone in the world where African countries can actually engage and trade within each other and removing all the barriers. So when we characterize Africa as just this problematic place without highlighting some of the local efforts that are ongoing in the continent, I think we are not doing too much justice to the continent that we are dealing with. And we need to pay attention to all that. It might not be as we want, and we might not get the satisfaction that we want, but we need to also acknowledge those local efforts that are ongoing in the continent. And for me, I think that it's wonderful. If we talk about technology, we talk about M-Pesa, which originated from Kenya. M-Pesa is used globally. That is technology that generated from Africa. All of us sitting here today, we are able to do mobile banking with the click of our phone. That technology came from Kenya. We need to acknowledge that. So the point I'm trying to say is that some of these things that we just consign Africa to this place that nothing good is coming from, there are actually a lot of good things that are coming from the continent, and we just need to spin that positive story in the media so that people will learn to know about those media and those stories as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we do need to talk as much about the issues that we're facing and the African population is facing, as well as the progress that is being made. That is a fair point. Nonetheless, we think that there are a lot of issues that needs to be addressed. We ought to be able to, acknowledge
Sorry,
what
guys,
those
I got
issues
to
are.
respond to something. So,
Yep.
if you want to finish up, I just wanted to
No, no,
respond
go
to the
ahead.
child here.
Go
No,
ahead. Go ahead.
that's fine. I'm not going to say anything. Thank you.
No, no, we're not quite finished yet. So if you want to make a point, I'm happy to give you the opportunity.
No, I just wanted to check a child here, so I will be.
Okay, all right. No,
back.
go ahead. Go ahead. That's all. That's all good.
Okay.
That's all good. You can go. That's no problem. All right. So I was making the point that Matthew has just made. It's important for us to highlight the issues as well as the advancement that is being made, even though some of these advancement are pretty slow paced, but at least there is some progress. And I suppose it's more about the frustration. We want to avoid to sound more like the Western media, but at the same time, we feel like there's so much room for more that can be done and that should be done. So how do we sort of maybe as a final comment for each one of you? I know it's a very difficult question, but how do we start? How should we start? You know, doing this mindset reprogramming or paradigm shift to enable that sort of transformation where we take modernity, globalization, and media to use it to the best to address our issues and achieve progress in our communities. James is still somehow
We can't hear him.
Yeah, we can't hear you. I don't know why. So if we still can't hear you, let me mute and unmute you from here. Now, I think it's still from your end.
Can
What
he?
you can do, you can go out and come back. You may it may improve. Okay. Well, we'll start sort of getting you to make your final comment, and then we'll finish. Maybe we'll start with Eugene.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, I think Matthew made a really great point. I think that Africa and Africans are moving in the right direction in terms of changing a lot of these things, and I've watched these changes happening. You know, there's now it's a lot easier to get around the continent. You have budget airlines. There's hubs of movement, like I see in West Africa. People have phones with like 3 SIM cards, and they're running businesses in multiple countries, and in the SADC region, everybody's trading, you know, cross border and so on and so forth. I think the governments are behind in supporting this. I think the governments need to support these efforts much more. So if your question is where do you start, what would be the first step? Possibly high-speed trains to make it easier for people to cross borders and move around, and you know, connect the continent that was artificially divided. Now it's time to proactively
Bring it
connect it
back.
and make it a lot easier for people to be mobile. Maybe that would support efforts that people are already making, you know, and not hinder them.
Absolutely. All right. Bertrand, you have a comment.
Yeah.
Before you comment, James, your microphone still says muted, so you must have muted yourself somehow. You can unmute. Yeah. Can you speak so we can hear if we can hear you? No, still can't. All right, Bertrand, go ahead.
Yep.
No worries.
Oh, good. Now, so I wanted to come in with two points. One of them is that I do believe that there is a lot of things that have happened in Africa that show that we are on a right path somehow. And that's what we said before, that when we talk about modernity or modernization, we can't say that we haven't done anything, because we're not on square zero. We've moved some distance.
Yeah.
What I really feel like needs to happen is there is a need to remove politics from the education and health, and even, you know, the economics. Like, you know, if somebody is a president today and tomorrow there's another person, the money shouldn't really be a problem there. The money should be kept somewhere separate, so that these people can fight in their politics, but the money and the people that need that money can really continue to prosper. The second thing is that I want to acknowledge that Africa and African countries have been deprived of, you know, they don't have access to the cash, to the money that every other country has. If you want to go to compare the debts that these countries have, check Australia, for example, and America and Singapore, all these rich countries, check how much money they actually owe the world, and check, you compare that to the African countries and you know, other poor countries, you realize a big discrepancy, and that is what defines, you know, how big of a project a country can actually do. You know, like we talk about, you know, people need electricity, people need access to this internet that we're talking about, but we don't have a lot of money to really do those infrastructures. I'm not saying that Africa should really be highly indebted, like they shouldn't really have a lot of debt, but I'm still conscious that we need a lot of money to be able to do those things in the first place before we can talk about the development at the level where every other country is. Having said this, I just want to encourage the politicians in Africa, for example, especially that I don't think we have good opposition parties or groups. The opposition is always on the bad side. You know, this is what they have done wrong. There's nothing good that any government that is in power has done. Everything is bad. That kind of opposition doesn't really do good to Africa, and it makes even the people that are in power to be frustrated, and somehow maybe I've never been a president, believe me, but I know that if I were a president, everything that I'm doing is criticized. Nothing is okay, and plus they criticize and not give an alternative. You know, the good thing about these other countries that have developed, if a political, if a, in opposition, you know, government, well, opposition party is saying this is not good, they are giving an alternative. What should actually be done? But back home, that's what we do. Oh, he's bad, he's bad, he's bad, he's bad. That's it. You know, we really need to change that, because that will change a lot of things and give some encouragement for the governments to really work in the best interest of the people. And
Okay.
the last thing that I want to say is that we need to promote the good image of Africa. As you said before, we are talking here, we're discussing about the bad things, but we know that there are a lot of good things. These good things need to be like made known to the world by the media, the African media, of course. Remember, I was in one of the lectures sometime like 3 years ago, and they put Africa in Google, and what came were the kids with you know, fleas on their
Eyes
nose,
in the mouth.
and there's all the small houses in the bush. There's nothing good. And who needs to put those pictures in the Google, you know, search or search engines? It's us. It's the Africans themselves. So let's wake up and do it. Thank you.
All right,
Yep.
Matthew.
Yeah, my conclusion thoughts would actually like to start from a comment by John, which is actually his last comment. And I think that that ties into what Bertrand has just said. Criticizing without alternatives is not helpful. When we criticize, we need to offer alternatives. No, we are not saying that we should sugarcoat the issues that are happening on the continent. We need to tell the truth, and we need to unpack our issues and think about how we can actually deal with them. There are two issues I just like to raise, and that will be my conclusion point. The point I want to make is that Africa is as modern as any other place. That's the first point. The second point I want to make is that if our idea of modernity is to catch up with the West, as John is proposing in his comment that we have had 70 years of independence and we are laughing stock, how many years has those countries been independent and have been working on themselves? That is a question. So it's like comparing apples to what? Oranges, which is not comparable. Can we begin to value Africa and what is happening in Africa as it is? Because that context matters. If we try to match Africa with China, to match Africa with Europe, to Australia, we'll always be inadequate. And that is not good for anyone. It affects our confidence as people, the confidence as Africans, the confidence as the continent. So we need to be judging ourselves based on our context and not to play that role of catch-up. Democracy, modernization, if you want, and all the things that we are talking about, they take their own shape in different contexts. China, Japan, Europe, America, India, Australia, they play out differently. So I don't think that saying, oh, Australia is here and Africa needs to catch up is going to work, because we will never be able to catch up. We should be judged on our own merit. That's my conclusion.
Okay. I think Dr. William was going to make the last comment before we end, and then I'll read out one comment from James, and that'll be the end of it. You got a couple of minutes, William, if you want to make a final comment.
No, there's nothing much that I can say apart from I think with Monsieur has made a very great point before I left. I think he was trying to challenge our thinking, which is also a great idea. But again, yes, we need to to work collaboratively as a society. We need to be innovative. We also need to borrow. Our leaders need to look at what happened with some of the advanced countries. For example, um, this week, or I mean last week and this week, Australia went and made a very critical move against against China. The strategy is about maybe preparing themselves to deal with China. But you know what they did? They have this friend, which is the friend, and they were being left behind. Even now, there is a tension between between France and Australia. But
Australia.
Australia built a very good, very strong, project that is going to happen in Australia with the support of US and also UK. And that is something that we also need to be able to look at it carefully as a, as African society, and our leaders need to look at those, some of those policies or ideas, and maybe try to see how we can, implement them in Africa. I'm not saying to create the division, but of course we need to work collaboratively in areas that we need to work collaboratively. But we need also to abandon some of the areas that we don't need to work collaboratively.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. And one last comment from James, who's still muted. Technology doesn't want to work for James, but in any case, it says for his final comment that collaboration between countries through trade agreement, good governance,
Yep.
internal focus, what we are good at, and what where our strength lies. So that's what Jamie is proposing as things that we need to look at. Obviously, there are a lot of issues in Africa, but there's a lot of progress as well. Africa is rising. It is being said there's a lot of economic development happening, but there's still a long way to go in terms of achieving what Africa is capable of, because there's a lot of wealth in Africa. There's a lot of potential in Africa that is still untapped, and it is part of our responsibility as sons and daughters of Africa to be able to contribute as much as we can. And one way to do that is to, I suppose, encourage the discussions of this type, where we're trying to assist. I mean, we're trying to get people to think about some of these issues that we require our collaboration, require our participation and contribution in whatever way we can. So I want to thank you, all of you guys, Beltran Abiakare, Matthew Mabefan, Dr. William Abur, James Lojogo, and Eugene Ullman. Thank you for your time. Today we've
Thank
taken
you.
a little bit more than usual, 1 hour. It's 1 hour and 15 minutes. I hope you will forgive me for going a bit longer, but it was important to talk about some of these issues. We will continue this series. We're probably going to have one more final discussion on this before we close it, and then we'll find out. I think I've had a few feedback that maybe we need some sort of debate now. You guys have been too nice with each other, so it's going to be some confrontation now.
Okay.
So get ready for not
Yep.
being nuts anymore, but
We need to go into a dojo there somewhere.
all right. So thank you, and have a good evening and a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
And we'll see you again next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. And for the
Thank
rest
you.
of you
Bye.
watching, we, as usual, we encourage you to share the video. We want to say a special thank you to John, who's been quite proactive in participating in this discussion through his comments. That is very good, and you've been making some very good points there. Even though I know there's another sister who apparently wasn't necessarily happy, but I don't know where she was coming from. But yeah, those of you watching, please share the video, subscribe to our Facebook channel, and like our Facebook page. And if you have something that you can share, contact us. We will look into potentially making that possible for you to share through the platform. Until next time, as usual, stay blessed and stay safe. Thank you. Bye bye.